Call the regular meeting of the Board of Education of October 23, 2024 to order. And on behalf of the board, acknowledge, of course, that we're meeting this evening on the traditional lands and territories of the Saanich peoples who have lived and learned on and have stewarded these lands for thousands of years. And we offer this acknowledgement with respect and in the hope that it will serve as a gesture promoting true reconciliation of our communities. I'm pleased to welcome management to the board's meeting tonight. Superintendent Eberwin, Secretary Treasurer Reed, Assistant Superintendent McKenzie, Director of Instruction Hunter, and Director of Instruction Westhaver. And I extend a welcome to representatives of our partner groups. Ms. Candace Whitney, the President of QP 441. Welcome, Candace. Ms. Sarah Postlethwaite from the Saanich Administrators Association. Welcome, Sarah. Don Peterson, who is the President of the Saanich Teachers Association. Hi, Don. And here in the room with us, Ryan Greenfield from the Federation of Parent Advisory Councils of Saanich, the district practice. So welcome, Ryan. Trustees, the agenda has been circulated. Is there a motion to adopt? Trustee McMurphy, seconded by Trustee Vandal. Are there any additions or revisions or late items? Trustee Manuel.
Yes, I have under the number 13 report from trustee representatives. I have a Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee report.
Thank you. Is there any objection, trustees, to adding that to our Thank you. All right, Trustee Manuel, that is added to the agenda under number 13. Are there any other additions, trustees? All right, I'll put the question to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The agenda is adopted as amended. Prior to the regular meeting, the board held an in-camera meeting and discussed personnel matters. Turning then, trustees, to the minutes of the regular meeting of September 18, 2024. Are there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Hearing none, I declare that the minutes are adopted by consensus as circulated. Business arising from the minutes, Secretary Treasurer Reed.
Through the chair, one item to report as business arising of the minutes is in relation to the letters that the board approved last June to local municipalities, encouraging them to consider implementing more bike lanes. And I can report back that each of those letters was received by the respective council and was placed on the council agenda. So we confirmed this was the case in Sydney, North Saanich, Central Saanich, and the district of Saanich. In the district of Saanich, the letter was referred to engineering, the director of engineering for information. In Central Saanich, the district received, there was no action taken by council, but the district also received a response and more information about the active transportation plan from the director of engineering in Central Saanich.
Are there any questions arising from that to information, trustees? Thank you, Mr. Reed. We'll move on then to item 5. There are no presentations or delegations. Are there any questions from our public guests or partner representatives? There, of course, will be a second opportunity for this later. Seeing no hands, we'll proceed then to item 6, which is the report from the chair. October 19 saw our provincial election results. It was anticipated to be a close contest, and indeed it was. And in fact, we understand that after recounts in 2 very close ridings and other ballots, such as mail-in ballots, we will ultimately know the seat count probably within several days. Then there'll be the question whether the two green members support one of the parties. And the Lieutenant Governor will have to grapple with this, and ultimately we'll find out who our government will be. From the board's perspective, Minister Singh, the Education and Childcare Minister under the previous government, was defeated in her Surrey North riding. We wish her well. We had developed a relationship with Minister Singh. The Vice Chair and I had visited with her twice, pleading for some funding relief. And she was personable and receptive and encouraging. And so we wish her well in whatever her next stage is. Of course, we wish to work effectively and productively with whomever forms government and with whomever is appointed as the next Minister of Education and Childcare. If I might be permitted an observation with respect to the process, quite apart from who forms government and the election of the two MLAs in Sandwich North and Island and Sandwich South, which covers the area coincident with the school district. Boards, including ours, hope that education, and principally public education, would find itself as a prominent election issue. That did not turn out to be. I think it's fair to say that the campaign in many ways was mediocre, lackluster, negative, polarizing, and did not spend a lot of time discussing thoughtfully the issues. For instance, the formal Conservative platform spoke about Mr. Eby 50 times and about Mr. Rustad 11. The NDP program, formal platform, spoke about Mr. Rustad more than 50 times and about Mr. Eby 29 times. So the focus was on personalities and the other position as opposed to a thoughtful discussion of the issues, and that disappoints me. It's not here for us tonight to decide whether this polarization, division, was a result of existing cleavages in society or it was a result of the campaign itself. But in the end of the day, other issues, but especially public education, were eclipsed by other matters. BCSTA did its best with its year-long advocacy program and its 3 priorities developed through the survey of boards, and with strong representation from President Carolyn Brody on an almost daily basis through the media, trying to sing the song about public education. But these were eclipsed by other matters, and there was no mention that I heard of the funding model or of unfunded inflationary costs, which of course are primary concerns to us here in the Sandwich District. Locally, I was able to raise these issues with some of the candidates in a personal and direct way, and they listened. But no one commented on them publicly, and no one made any commitments. This is disappointing, but the conclusion is, I suppose, that the campaign naturally focused on other things, whether they were healthy or not. It can lead to an inference that the public perception is that public education is in a healthy state here in British Columbia. After all, if the public isn't up in arms about something, maybe the system is essentially working. I don't know, but we all know, those of us who are engaged so intimately in the process, of the work, the judgment, the staff expertise, and the commitment that is required in order to make the system work well. And so for that reason, despite the election, despite the disappointments with respect to a discussion of the issues, discussion of public education, and the lack of a clear result at this stage, it reminds us to exercise our right to advocate year-round, not just at budget time and not just at financial matters, but year-round about all we do and whatever we can do, both in the eyes of government and in the eyes of our public and our constituents, to raise the profile of public education. As counterpoint to that, we have a great news story this month where we announced the employment equity agreement between QP 441, our support staff, and the school district. This was a long time coming, involved intense and careful work, and it may well be the first in the country. And for that, we're very proud. It's part of our work towards truth and reconciliation, and it's intended to address underrepresentation of support staff with Indigenous ancestry. Took a year. It aligns with the agreement that we made with the Sandwich Teachers Association in the last round of bargaining. It qualified as a special program under the Human Rights Tribunal and will address employment barriers to equity of opportunity. And so we're proud of this. And we want to offer particular thanks to Human Resources Director Reed and to you too, Ms. Whitney. Thank you, Candace, for your support and hard work to achieve this agreement, of which we all can be proud. In sad news, we regret the loss of a longtime district teacher, Bill Braun, on October 16th. Bill was part of the original Stellies staff when the school opened in 1977, and he was a woodworking and shop teacher and then moved to counseling, retiring in 2005. Bill was the father of Ryan Braun, one of the vice principals at Stellies currently. And he's been described as strong, kind, a mentor, a pillar, hugely respected, and will be terribly missed. Trustees Elder and McMurphy and Ms. Lancy in particular knew him and the family well and felt themselves privileged, I gather, to do that. So we offer our sympathies and our remembrances to Bill's widow, Hillary, and to Ryan, and to the Braun family in the loss of Bill. Also very sad and close to our board is the loss of Warren Feek, the husband of our friend Victoria Martin, who was a trustee in the South Zone on this board from 2014 to January 2022 and served as chair of the board for 5 years in that period. Warren passed unexpectedly and suddenly and prematurely at the age of 71 last week. Some of us got to know him well as he supported Victoria in her work and in her role as chair and would occasionally attend board meetings. His loss is very hard for her and for their 3 children. And on behalf of us all, I express our sympathies, our support to Victoria and to the family. And I express too our appreciation for Warren for his commitment to our work through Victoria, and to his commitment to his family and to his wit and his sense of humor, which was never absent when we ran into him. So we'll think often of Victoria and their 3 children coming days. The Vancouver Island School Trustees Association Vista Fall Conference occurred October 4 and 5 in Port Alberni, and most of the board was able to attend. Our Vista representative, Trustee Hickman, will bring a report later in the meeting, and we'll also touch on the Spring Vista Conference scheduled for March here on the South Island, for which we'll be a sponsor. We'll have no regular board meetings in December, but you may recall that the 5th is designated as our term evaluation and planning day, facilitated by Gordon Lee of ACSDA. Following the board direction last month on further refinements to the process, I've been in touch with him and he's received our information, and we will be working again with Trustee Silzer as vice chair in finalizing the arrangements for that day. And finally, November 11, of course, is Remembrance Day, commemorating the end of World War I and the sacrifices from that conflict to bring us the freedoms and the democracy which we exercised just last Saturday in one way. Most, if not all, of our schools will be hosting a ceremony on November 8th, the Friday preceding that day. And they will be, if they haven't already, inviting zonal trustees to these meetings, to these ceremonies. It's unlikely that we'll all be able to attend all of our zonal meetings. And so we've developed a practice to some degree where we alternate schools or circulate in various years. But this is one of the few opportunities trustees have to attend schools directly, to appreciate their work firsthand, and to reflect with students and staff. So I encourage all of us, if we have those opportunities, if we can make it work in our schedules, to attend those. Thank you. That is the report from the chair, and I will turn to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a few items this evening that I would like to share with the board and other guests at the table today. We are in the month of October. Halloween is approaching, so I thought the theme was appropriate for my first slide. There are several items that I wanted to comment on for this month with everybody here. First is our Indigenous Focused Non-Instructional Day that happened on September 23rd. I'll point out some highlights from that day. Overall, a very, very successful day here in our district. The unveiling of the Claremont House Post was another significant event in our district. A very recent research report out of UBC on the effective SOGI 123 resources in the province. I want to highlight some of the results from that. It's hot off the presses, and I thought it would be of interest to the board and others here this evening. I want to give a bit of an update on the Saanich framework for generative AI and where we are positioned. The board will remember that I reported in this last June as something that we're focused on. And we continue to learn and grow in this field, and I want to give the board an update as to where we are. And I want to ask you if you're smarter than a grade 5 student. I'll tell you in advance that I am not. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. On September the 23rd, we had our annual non-instructional day focused on Indigenous themes at Claremont Secondary School. The title, Student Voice in Action, our collective work towards anti-racism and decolonization. It was a combination day where we had a keynote speaker who was speaking about anti-racism, and a total of 17 breakout sessions over the day on a variety of topics, from trauma-informed instruction to racism in our schools, to various resources that are available. The list was extensive and exhaustive, and it's something that we can all be proud of. As I said, the speaker that day was a local expert on anti-racism, Dr. Lisa Gunderson, who has been a speaker in some of our schools. The students absolutely rave about her, and we thought it was time to bring her to the staff. She gave the keynote address on understanding the importance of parallel journeys of IDEA, which is inclusive, diversity, equity, and anti-racism, along with the general topics of anti-racism and decolonization. And then she provided two breakout sessions, not outbreak sessions, but breakout sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It was a heavily attended event. The majority of the teachers in the district were there, along with administrators and some support staff. And we were fortunate to have a couple of trustees join us as well that day. It was an extremely successful day and shows our commitment in our district to these themes and our ongoing journey towards, as the chair indicated earlier, true reconciliation within our community. On Tuesday, October the 1st, Claremont unveiled its house post outside of its front door. Elder May Sam from the Sartlip Nation was there to provide a blessing to the event. You can see her in the lower right corner. And the main artist, Bear Horn, in the upper left corner there was the main carving, but also Howard Fortune, his cousin, was there, and you might recognize the last name. Doug Fortune is a very well-known Indigenous artist on the peninsula, and Howard is his son. We were welcomed with song by two drummers, Rob Morris and DJ Pierre, and Principal Buckham was the MC for the event. There was a light mist in the air, and the air was cool, and everybody felt it was a blessing to be blessed with the moisture and the welcome spirit that was there that day. Overall, and another exciting event for our district in terms of our recognition of the local Indigenous community and the importance to us of them. A recent report from UBC came out. The report is entitled Students Feel Safer Here and More Included, an evaluation of SOGI 123 in BC. I tickle my throat. I thought I'd start off with a couple of quotes that were quoted within the research. First one from a researcher, the main researcher, our findings offer robust evidence that SOGI 123 is beneficial for inclusion and support of all students, not just LGBTQ plus students. Another quote from the report, a SOGI lead in one of the school districts. Yeah, I think we've created a safe space for students who identify as being part of the SOGI community. And one from a parent, that this was really important and our family feels seen. My child feels seen and we appreciate the effort that you put in here. So what did the report say? Well, it was crafted by Dr. Elizabeth Saucy, the lead researcher from the UBC School of Nursing. And here are some of the findings, not an exhaustive list, but some of the main ones that came out in this report. And the board, remember that SOGI 123 is a series of resources, teaching resources that are accumulated in the province that have been made available to all districts. And at this time, I believe, Peter, if I'm not mistaken, all 60 school districts are active participants with SOGI 123. The results that they used in terms of the success of these resources were gathered from the BC Adolescent Health Surveys in 3 years. These surveys are conducted every 5 years. So they used the results in 2013, 2018, and 2023. And the survey focuses on students grades 7 through 12. And what they found is that over the past 10 years, LGBTQ plus youth are more likely than heterosexual peers to face verbal harassment, social exclusion, and physical assaults, as well as face more discrimination because of their sexual orientation and their heterosexual youth peers. Where SOGI 123 teaching resources were implemented, there has been a statistical decrease in bullying and discrimination. The longer the implementation, the greater the impact. An important factor for successful implementation of SOGI 123 was supportive leadership, and that's reflected both in the district leadership, but also at the board level as well for these important resources and support for students in our community. GSAs, once known as gay straight alliances, but now gender sexuality alliances, also have an impact, but they found that the SOGI 123 resources had impacts above and beyond GSAs, including for heterosexual students, that they found that the implementation of these resources that recognize students for who they are in the school also helped in the reduction of bullying and harassment against heterosexual peers. So really, really important information about the success of that program in the province. Out of curiosity, they did not specify individual districts. They were taking a look at it as a global story. But I will say, for your interest, here in Saanich, SOGI 123 came online around 2016, and Saanich had formal SOGI leads in all of its schools since 2015. So before my tenure during the tenure of Dr. Elder. And we have GSAs in all of our secondary and middle schools currently. Our SOGI leads meet in person 2 to 3 times a year and have other online check-ins. We have at least one SOGI lead in every school. Some schools have 2 or 3 as well. And our school leads participate in professional development opportunities like the October SOGI 123 Educator Summit. And there are other opportunities throughout the year as well. So it's a program that is very highly subscribed and believed in here in Saanich, and I believe it's also having a significant impact here. You will recall this slide, hopefully, from my June report. It's talked about Gen AI, and I give it to you as a reminder of what we talked about back in June, that generative artificial intelligence is ubiquitous, and it's finding its way into K-12 education. It actually can enhance the instructional core, both from the teacher perspective, the student perspective, and also from the curricular content perspective as well. And the conversation really needed to be about how AI interacts with the educational landscape. AI is not about facilitating cheating. Cheating happened well before artificial intelligence came about. and artificial intelligence isn't going to change that reality. It really is about teaching pedagogy, the learning profiles of students, and what educational and business applications are possible with it. So this was from my June report. So what have we been doing since that time? Well, we've been working on generating a framework for our use here in Standard Schools, and we've used several documents as foundational pieces for us. Of course, the first one, the board strategic plan and the 4 theme priorities within it. The First People's Principles of Learning and the foundations of those 2 primary documents really set the stage for our work within GenAI. But also within our district administrative procedures around things such as learning resources and equitable access to educational environments, all within our admin procedures. These GenAI fits very well within that. Our codes of conduct with regards to treating people respectfully and respecting the learning space and the workspace. The ministry also put out a consideration for using AI tools in K-12 schools. This is general guidelines. There aren't rules in here, but these are guidelines that districts can use to help formulate their thoughts around Gen AI. And Australia has been one of the first jurisdictions in the world to put out some guidelines around Gen AI. And so we've been using that booklet as well. And we've been fortunate to be invited into a learning partnership with ALP, which is a consulting company that has worked extensively with several school districts around the province. And we've had an opportunity to join this group, which meets in Surrey. And we have attended 5 sessions there over the last number of months to this past fall. And it gave us an opportunity to meet with other leaders around the province, to work with these consultants around best practices in AI, what's happening in the educational landscape, what are the benchmarks we should be looking for, what are the bumper pads that we should be paying attention to with this brand new technology. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for our district. One of the things that they said to us is, while we feel like we're behind because Gen AI is so out there, we're actually out in front in terms of the districts across North America, that we're probably in the top 4 or 5% of districts and are thinking around Gen AI. So we feel very lucky to be part of this group and continue to learn with them as we move forward. And you'll notice Copilot up at the top. This is our district approved resource that we use for Gen AI. It's part of our Microsoft suite of applications. And it's one that I'm going to talk about a little bit as we move forward through this presentation. So what is our framework in standard? Well, it's in its infancy. I'm not saying this is the final product. I'm saying this is the initial outlook of what we're looking for. And we have it divided up into 4 main areas: teaching and learning, inclusive and accessible learning, ethical use of AI, and privacy and security and safety around it. And as I said earlier, the board's strategic plan and the First People's Principles of Learning really are the anchor to how we want to be using this new tool. When we use it appropriately, we believe that Gen AI tools have the potential to enhance teaching and learning. In addition to direct classroom uses, it can streamline administrative and organizational tasks, can optimize efficiency, enabling everyone to prioritize ongoing human interactions. Gen AI is not going to replace people. It's going to help them do their tasks more efficiently so we can focus more on the people and less on the paper. We know that education is inherently relational and that human connections are what make the difference. And while Gen AI can be a valuable support, maintaining that important human contact is at the forefront of our thinking. And we're going to use this tool as a complement to those human processes, not a replacement for them. So let's take a look at these 4 areas in a bit more detail. Teaching and learning. We believe in providing meaningful and relevant teaching and learning experience. That's the overarching theme of what we do every day in our K-12 schools. We do this by making sure with Gen AI that we communicate clear information and we provide guidelines for the effective use of it. That we make sure we test the Gen AI tools that we're going to use in our schools, that we make accessible to staff and students before they are used. That we understand how these tools work, including any limitations or potential biases they might have in the creation of their content. that they're used as supplements to enrich and to be creative, not to replace traditional instruction. And that they have the opportunity to support more personalized learning for students, make it more accessible, be part of the digital literacy skills that we are imparting K through 12 with all of our students. With regards to making education more inclusive and accessible, it's important that we continue to embrace the well-being and the diversity and the fairness and equity within our schools. We do this by making sure we continue to adopt a human-centered approach, that we apply the tools that expose the users to different ideas and perspectives, but we avoid the reinforcement biases that might come with Gen AI. And that these tools need to be inclusive, they need to provide greater accessibility, and they need to provide greater equity for the students in our care. With regards to ethics, we want to make sure that our tools are chosen carefully and we use them in a safe and equitable environment. We want to inspire learners to become knowledgeable and curious and active global citizens. We want to select the tools that align with their district priorities and procedures for technology. We want to make sure that the tool is integratable with what we're using. We want to make sure we monitor these tools' usage, and we want to report back on a regular basis to see how they're being utilized. And we want to make sure that these experiences reflect our code of conduct in terms of respect and support and caring for everybody in our community. And finally, with regards to privacy, security, and safety, we need to be careful when we protect the privacy of the student information and staff information in this district. And we do this by ensuring that all staff have a broad understanding of privacy and security procedures, and we're rolling out those this fall. We started last springtime and continue to bring awareness to all the staff in the district around safety and privacy. That these tools adhere to robust data security protocols and privacy regulations that protect the sensitive data. That the Gen tools respect and uphold privacy and data rights, and we have clear procedures to mitigate potential risks and safeguard sensitive information. The tool that we are using is Microsoft Copilot. There are literally hundreds of tools out there. Copilot is now accessible to every staff member in the district, and we have started to bring this general awareness to school staffs. We brought some awareness to our district office staff just the other day. And we're providing these guidelines to people so that they know this is a safe environment to experiment. And we provided them with guidelines around data security and safety to make sure that that information that is so privileged for us to have isn't shared out there on the internet. And so this is a slow process. This is not a one and done process. We have a lot more work to do. So what are we looking for in this school year? Well, as I said, we're going to have each school staff work through this Gen AI framework, providing them with these district bumper pads, so to speak, so they can begin exploring with Microsoft Copilot. We're going to construct a Standard Schools working group of teacher champions in every school, along with school administrators and some district staff, to provide ongoing feedback on what's working and what's not working. And we're going to continue our work with the Surrey Collaborative Group to learn more from other districts as well about their experiences with Gen AI, share budding best practices, and build upon our collective experiences. And in the near future, at some point, we will facilitate a parent-guardian information session to talk about where we are and where we want to go with this new tool that offers extremely bright promises. We need to be slow and steady in this rollout. We need to be cautious, but we need to not be afraid to try and experiment in a safe and productive environment. And finally, are you smarter than grade 5 students? I was at Qualston Elementary yesterday on one of my school tours, and I was taken into a grade 5 classroom, and the principal said to me, okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're going to be on stage in a minute here. And so I went into the grade 5 teacher's classroom. There I am at the front with my little answer pad, and the students had answer pads, and it was a quiz on elections in BC. There were 20 questions. First 10 were really easy. And then I sort of fell off the cliff after that. They were quite pleased with themselves, and every table beat the superintendent in the elections quiz. It was a fabulous opportunity to spend some time in one of the classrooms. That's Matt Colson, one of the grade 5 teachers at the school. And that's the Humboldt superintendent at the front holding up the sign. I'm not sure if I got that answer right or not. But it was a wonderful experience and a great example of democracy in action with the teacher talking about the electoral process in our province. That concludes my report. If there are any questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. You covered a lot of ground. Are there any questions or comments for Lily? Trustee Sills.
Chair, Superintendent, for really interesting and entertaining. So 2 questions. One, regarding advanced learning partnerships. Is that something we subscribe to? Do we pay a fee to belong to that?
We needed to pay a participatory fee to join this collaborative because these consultants needed to have their time compensated, but it was a reasonable amount of money. And just a fabulous learning opportunity. We wouldn't have had this opportunity to sit down as a team of, how many of us were involved? 5 or 6 of us? Six of us for 2 days straight in September, really putting our heads around what it means to have a framework in Saanich and to have that leadership guide us in our thinking and to provide us with exemplars to think about. We are very well positioned right now because of this opportunity.
So, second question, where did you fall off the cliff on the questions?
I was afraid I might be asked that question because I can remember some of the questions, but I also can't remember the right answers. Okay. Who were the first people legally able to vote in British Columbia?
Yeah.
Not exactly. I said men, and I got it wrong because it wasn't exact enough. White men with property owners, that's right. So you do better than I am. What was the first year that women were allowed to vote in British Columbia?
Business case, right? 1818.
1919, I think it was, yeah. You're smarter than I. Are you smarter than a trustee? Apparently not.
I wasn't old enough to vote at the time, but I remember.
What was another one I didn't get? It was questions like that where I struggled with dates. And when was the first election in British Columbia? That was another one. What date was the first election in British Columbia? Right? I wasn't allowed. I only had a whiteboard. I could. She stole mine. I think it was 1879 or something. Or something like that. Anyways, I'm still failing miserably. I don't have to. But it was a lot of fun.
Look what you started, Trustee Sills.
Sorry, one final question. When you're doing AI presentations, with the help, I guess, of the and you have images of people, I can always tell that the people are away from outer space. Right?
No, you
Don't
can't.
look at the eye. I think I can. That's the other issue.
We have an activity for you.
Okay, yeah, because it seems to me that, while we want to humanize education as much as possible, the advertising for generative AI concerns me because those don't look like people. But
We'll do an activity with the trustees maybe at an upcoming Ed Directions meeting. You'll enjoy it.
Thank you, Trustee Sills. Is there anything else, trustees, on the superintendent's report? A lot of meat there. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you.
We'll move on to school successes, which are in the material. Is there any comment with respect to school successes, trustees? All right, thank you. Then item 9 is the first of our committee report, the Education Directions Committee with Committee Chair Sills, please.
At Education Directions meeting, we were really pleased to have Assistant Superintendent Hensey and Darcy McNee give us a global citizenship update And their presentation was entitled Local Action for Global Impact, the Saanich Local and Global Citizen. And we were led through a presentation that explained the Saanich School Student Compass and how student voice has informed it and how that has been used to help students to reflect on global citizenship. We were also given by Director Carmen Crawford and 3 members of her team a presentation on the Saanich Schools Literacy Plan. And if you haven't actually seen this yet, this is the literacy plan, very clear and concise and very fundamental in launching the district's literacy plan. We're very grateful for that. And finally, we were given the proposed schedule for the student voice sessions for this school year by Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Trustee Silzer or staff on the Ed Directions report? All right, thank you. We'll carry on into Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee Chair Elder.
Thank you, Chair. As the agenda, the report will reflect, there was a presentation at Finance, Facilities, and Technology from Erica Lexford, a consultant from Ready Energy Solutions, supported by working alongside Director Rob Long. And I just do want to highlight for the public board meeting as well as for the previous public meeting, the extent to which Ready Energy Solutions, as our district's consultant, has created clarity and direction and I think, a real strong sense of positive momentum and results around targets that we have in regard to reduction of greenhouse gases and carbon emissions, in keeping with requirements from the province, but also in keeping with our own generally held objectives to reduce our footprint of greenhouse gases. And I was, as we all were, I think, pleased to see the achievability of some very, very aggressive targets for reduction of greenhouse gases. And that achievability comes with tremendous cost, with funding that will probably not come our way. So I think it's a different challenge than looking at it and saying it can't be done. Knowing that it can be, and it will just take the kind of money that can be affordable within the public education system. So perhaps those things can come together in the future and we can find a way, either with reduced costs or additional funds, to make all the moves that are required in the domains within the energy reduction plan that the district has. But I was pretty proud of our district in that clarity with which we are focusing on these very important priorities, and impressed by the quality of the work by the team from Ready Energy Solutions and by all of our staff and students and community members embracing these ideas. So that presentation is attached as it was to the agenda and is attached to this report. And of course, people are free to read it, on an ongoing basis and learn from it. And I think celebrate the directions that we're taking while realizing that these lofty objectives, while technically achievable, may not be financially achievable until we bridge that gap. So I'm happy to pause there if there are any comments about that relatively substantial piece of work that was discussed that day. So moving on, there are 2 items for recommendation. The first is a recommendation in regard to expenditure budget changes, some additional expenditures flowing from additional funds into the district based on the finalization of enrollment and funding, which isn't quite final yet until some cross-enrollment matters are resolved in terms of enrollment data. But starting on page 62 of the 79-page report, if my memory serves me correctly, is that briefing note from the Secretary Treasurer about the enrollment changes in positive directions for the most part. And financial changes, most of which are positive, and expenditure changes that flow from that based on attending to these new students who come our way, and these higher levels of designation in certain categories that bring funding and require the funding to be directed primarily toward those students. So with all of that in mind comes a recommendation which I'll put on the floor, and it may be that as part of the discussion, people will have questions of the Secretary Treasurer, but the committee recommends an interest be able to move. Can the board approve the proposed 2024-25 expenditure budget changes?
Thank you. Seconded by Trustee McMurphy.
I'll just note that those expenditure changes are noted in that, are covered in that briefing note. They do align with the pressures that financial pressures that came along for staffing levels in particular to support those additional students that gave rise to, and those additional designations that gave rise to those additional funds. So it's quite logical and very well explained. And if there are any questions, I know the Secretary Treasurer would be happy to answer them.
Not seeing any, Trustee Eidman. I think it really was so well explained. As you have too. All right, trustees, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The second item for recommendation is the multi-year financial plan, which the Secretary Treasurer brought to Finance, Facilities and Technology. It is also attached here as it was the committee agenda, starting on page 66, if I'm correct. And it's got a briefing note from the Secretary Treasurer along with that very multi-year financial plan, which is a requirement that we have. But I don't know that the requirement from government to have a multi-year plan anticipated the depth and quality of the multi-year financial plan, at least from my point of view, that we have in ours as prepared by the Secretary of Treasury and Director of Finance on this slide. So I won't ask the Secretary Treasurer to go through it at this time. It's thoroughly canvassed in committee, but there may be some questions in regard to that, perhaps even before I put the motion on the floor.
Are there questions?
The committee recommends, and I trustee Alder move that the board approve the 2024 to 2027 multi-year financial plan.
Seconded by Trustee Hickman. You wish to comment any further, Trustee Eidman?
Just thank you, Chair. That the most interesting part of any spreadsheet is always the bottom right-hand corner, or at least the bottom row. And in this case, seeing what the projections are for funding and expenditures that seem relatively logical, they all flow down into an anticipated contingency or revenue beyond expense set of numbers from year to year flowing forward. And while those do look to remain somewhat healthy on an ongoing basis, it's also clear that those revenues in excess of expenditures will continue to go down in a way that might become rather troubling by the end of that 3-year period, and may in fact be troubling next spring, because we never know exactly when the pressures will mount to the extent that even the most conservative and accurate projections find themselves in some sort of water. So I'm confident that this is a strong plan with an embedded caution around pressures going forward as a result of, in particular, unfunded inflationary pressures.
Thank you, trustees. Discussion, Trustee Hickman.
I just would like to comment that I think it strengthens our need to continue with our finance advocacy with the Ministry of Education and Childcare ad nauseam. I think we just need to hit them hard and hit them off.
I'd be surprised if you broached any disagreement. Thank you for that. Trustees, any other discussion, questions, or comments? All right, all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. And thank you, trustee Elder. These are two very brief motions, but as you pointed out, they represent considerable work on behalf of the Secretary Treasurer of the Department of Finance and from you too, from the committee. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair. I do hope that as people see these extensive and detailed documents coming through finance and facilities, the partners upstream from the committee meetings, that's the fall committee meetings, then shared again upstream of this board meeting or of each board meeting. That people take the time to really dive into them and generate questions and bring them forward. The dialogue in committee, and I know at this board table, and you're right, it's easy to say, let's approve it. Somewhat glossing over how complex and deep these issues are, and how well and understandably prepared they are by our senior team. And that ends my report.
Thank you, trustee McMurphy.
There's a word in the motion that we've already adopted that does bother me, and that is the word approve. And when you look at the bottom line, it goes 7 million, 5 million, 3 million, 1 million. I don't know if there's another word other than approve, but it's not a rosy picture that the 5-year, multi-year financial plan rather presents to us. So it's a challenge, I think, for us to keep in mind as we.
Thank you, trustee McMurphy. If the context doesn't mean endorse, I know you know.
Just trying to make.
Understood. Any other questions
It's not a
for?
motion that we adopt with glee or
No.
pleasure or satisfaction.
There've been a series of things. The trustees, is there any other comment or question with respect to the finance report from trustee Elder? Thank you, Committee Chair Elder, and we'll move then to item 12 of the agenda, which is the Policy Development Committee report. Committee Chair Van Wel.
Chair. So at committee last week, we had a briefing note provided by Superintendent Fenderlin, and it was to discuss the policy review. As Policy 6 states, we, as a board, shall review the policies once during our term. And so in the briefing note, we were provided with a table that lists all of our 29 policies, when they've been worked on, actions that have been taken. And during our discussions, it was determined that we have 16 policy committee meetings left in our term. And so the discussion was having 1 to 2 policies brought forward to us each month to talk about it, see if any changes need to be made. So I will put a motion on the floor. The committee recommends, and I, trustee Van Wel, move that the superintendent be directed to begin the process of bringing 1 to 2 policies every month to the Policy Development Committee meeting for its consideration and discussion.
Second by trustee Hickman. Any further comment, Chair Van Wel?
No, I think I've covered everything.
Other trustees on the motion? All right. Question, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
And that's my report.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Van Wel? Thank you. Thank you, trustee Van Wel, for that. Well, we're going to move then to item 13, reports from trustee representatives, and the first will be the Vista Fall Conference with our Vista representative, trustee Hickman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to combine the fall conference and the spring conference information in one report, if that's
By all means.
good. Okay. So we, October 4th and 5th, we spent in beautiful Port Alberni, hosted by School District 70 Whim for our fall conference. Friday events were held at Alberni District Secondary School. Beautiful school, I might add. I was quite impressed with how lovely it is. After opening ceremonies, there was a presentation by Dr. Andrea Walsh, professor at UVic. and Jeff Cook, President of Alberta Residential School Survivors Art and Education Society. This was a really moving presentation, and it focused on repatriated paintings done by residential school students taught by Canadian artist Robert Aller in the 50s and 60s. Some of the artwork was really, all of it was touching, actually. And the fact that these pieces were done by children so long ago was really quite moving. Several of the residential school survivors were at the presentation with their paintings and were available to speak with during breakout sessions. Breakout sessions were offered with opportunity to speak to the residential school survivors, as well as healers offered moving brushing ceremonies, and we were also offered tours of the school by student ambassadors. Personally, I went to a brushing ceremony and I found it was quite intense, yet soothing. I left feeling quite an overall sense of calm, but it really was an intense experience for me. I had a really delightful tour of some of the areas of the school that were meaningful to my student ambassador, one of which was the music area. And I also was able to listen in to the conversation one of the residential school survivors was having with Trustee Silzer and a few others. And it was interesting, she shared about the cycle of abuse that she had experienced and the importance of breaking that cycle. And that was exhibited as well in her artwork. It was on a beach and there were no houses. And when she was asked about that, she says, well, houses are scary places for me. They're not safe. And I didn't want that in my painting. So I thought that was really an interesting story for her to share. The evening event started with opening ceremony and a musical performance by students at the Sumas Elementary School, or from the Sumas Elementary School. We also had a fishbowl presentation on how far we've come. This was a panel of 4 superintendents answering predetermined questions of the changes they have seen in education, also acknowledging the work yet to be done. And then Friday night was finished with a mix and mingle, and we were serenaded by a student junior jazz band called Sus 4. Saturday morning, we held a Vista business meeting. A couple of items from the business meeting that I found interesting were suggestions that districts need to develop an AI policy. One of the participants suggested that. Another question specific to IECs. How does the district navigate with multiple nations that don't get along? That's not our experience here in Saanich, thankfully. But it was an interesting thing that was posed. Lastly, we had a presentation on race and safer schools together. One of the things that stood out for me was about the reporting tools and the process that takes place when a report is submitted and how quickly it moves through to the action. That is my report on the Fall Vista. Next is the spring conference hosted by Saanich, Victoria, and Sioux School Districts.
Could I stop you there just for a moment, Trustee Hickman? Are there any questions or comments, trustees, others of you attended the conference? Is there any comment on relating to Trustee Hickman's report or any questions before we move on?
Did I hit it? Okay, no.
You did. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
So moving on, then, next is the spring conference hosted by Saanich, Victoria, and Sioux School Districts. We're going to hold it at the beautiful Oak Bay Beach Hotel, March 7th and 8th. Currently, myself, Trustee Manuel, and Ms. Glancy, also known as Lee. We're working to finalize the agenda with 2 districts, with the other 2 districts, and then we're going to work out with our executive team on Saanich's presentation ideas and materials.
Thank you. Anything arising from that, trustees? Thank you, Trustee Hickman.
Thank you.
We look forward to the spring. COPACs, and I understand Trustee Silzer and Vandal attended COPACs. Do you have something for us?
Thank you, Chair. This was already mentioned, but Trustee Silzer and myself attended COPACs
We talked number one about, on September 17th, two school boards got together, the Samming School Board and our school board, and we had a retreat. And it's been a long time. I think it's been 15 or 16 years since we last met. It was very successful, we thought. And the second thing is that we approved the 2023-24 financial statement. We talked about VISTA and how we attended on October 4th and 5th. And part of VISTA, we were very privileged to attend a lovely Erase seminar.
Thank you, trustee Sills.
Yeah, so the report from COPAX is on what we tell them rather than what we learn from them, because we are sent away as soon as they start their business meeting. So, but we were also there with Superintendent Everett and Secretary Treasurer Reed and Director Westhaver. And so they provided reports on the ministry being in a hiatus because of the election, or interregnum as it's called. Secretary Treasurer Reed talked about the Energy Sustainability Plan report, and Director Westhaver gave summary of the Prairie report that relates to School District 63. So that was what we discussed, and then we left and COPAX had the meeting. So,
Right. Thank you both. Anything arising, trustees, from that report on attendance to COPAX meeting? All right, thank you. Trustee Van Well, it's your turn to talk about the Victoria Youth Court and Justice.
Thank you. I will say that this is on September 26th, and actually our next meeting is tomorrow, so it's a little off in the timing, but I attended last month, and the intention, well, they did have a panel discussion, and it all revolved around the school liaison officers. So they had a person from the Sandwich Police Department and an officer from the Victoria Police Department. They also had both of the MIST group. So Mabel was a counselor, and then Gord McGee, who is the police. And and he is. His 2 years is up, so he will be leaving MIST if somebody else will be replacing him. Nicole Duncan, the chair of the Victoria School District, was invited to participate in this panel, but she had declined due to previous engagement. And this came a couple days after the ministry sent the letter, and we all know, sent the letter to Victoria School District, politely asking them to work with the police departments on plans for the police liaison officer or something along those lines. So needless to say, both of the police officers that were there were quite pleased with the announcement. And they were looking forward to working with Victoria School District moving forward. So they talked about the things that were happening within the schools and outside of the schools. I won't go into all the details because it's actually some of it is quite disturbing with the gangs. Most of the gangs are what is happening to the young people. But one of the things that was actually brought up was with the MIST group. They, in the past, they've been going for quite some time, working 5 days a week, just the two of them. A lot of requests from different groups, including this committee, have been sent to the government asking for more money because it's becoming a problem. There's a lot more people that they're having, a lot more kids that they're having to deal with, and it's a quite a large workload. And unfortunately, some of their funding has actually been cut off. So these two are down to 2 days a week, despite the fact that they need more. So one of the things that came out of the committee was an op-ed. So we had 4 of the committee members put together within a week an op-ed talking about the need for more money for MIST. And I actually, like yesterday, I was looking at it and I didn't see anything. And I just noticed today. So yesterday, the Times columnist finally picked it up and printed it. And today, Check News did a news clip on it as well. They spoke to one of the Victoria councillor who's on the committee, Crystal Lowton, I think, and she was talking about the need for more money. So all we have to do is just keep getting it out there, and hopefully they can somebody will say, hey, maybe we need to do this. So yeah, and I think so that was the big thing that was a good 2-hour session actually, which was quite interesting. And then we had a couple of grants that were approved. The committee actually has quite a bit of funds, and so different groups can request funds. The 2 groups were the Humane Nature Counseling Society and the Umbrella Society. So they've got two programs that were looking for funding, and we approved funding. And that's about it. There was just a few other things, and they have note, and yeah, that was it. And so that's my report.
Thank you, Trustee Manuel. I did have the opportunity to review that op-ed piece. I thought it was very well written.
Yeah, I got it. If anybody wants to take a look at it.
Thank you, and trustees will recall that this board wrote a letter in support of this, the Mobile Youth Services team, recently, and in fact, in correspondence tonight is reply from the Solicitor General.
Yeah.
About that we have an opportunity to address. So, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Trustee Manuel on her report? Trustee Silsik?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I guess it's a question also to maybe the Director Westhaver, and that is, what about School District 63, and is our liaison program aware of gang activity in our district? And should we be concerned about the resources that we have to deal with students in School District 63?
Is that a question to Director Westhaver?
It's through, yeah.
Through the chair to the board. The role Roger occupies is community outreach coordinator. We see him in the preventative nature, where he engages with kids who maybe suddenly disengaged from the school and encouraging them back into schools. And if there's some students who do have those moments where they have to be engaged with a parole officer, there's those gentle reminders to stick to the schedule and to make sure you make right. So Robert does some of that guidance from some of the kids. He's been there as a support and a resource for parents and families who are finding it difficult sometimes dealing with some teenage individuals who are finding themselves making and found themselves in difficult situations. But I would just like to report that we are extremely happy with the work Brother Young is doing and networking and getting to know a lot of kids in schools and administrators and counselors throughout our district. So, and even connecting with our partners and law enforcement. I think the term liaison is a historical term, but I've always viewed our police officers as partners in supporting students in the community. So I have nothing but nice things to report at this point. And we're just happy the funding is there, but like a lot of grants, it is worrisome when grants do run out, and I too appreciate the advocacy for this continued supports. Yes.
Does that have to follow up? I forget whether Roger's contract is for, what's the duration of that?
Would be to complete this school year and then a year and a little bit beyond. So it was funding for 3 years.
Thank you. Anything further, trustee Susan? Other trustees? All right, thank you, trustee Manuel. We'll move on to item 14, correspondence. There are 5 items. The first is a letter from Mr. Peterson of the Saanich Teachers Association advising about commencement of local bargaining. I don't see, that's for information really. I don't see that we have to do anything with that unless trustees have questions or comment. And then we'll move to the second one, which is a letter from Central Saanich Fastball with respect to the Brentwood Elementary property. I'll invite the Secretary Treasurer to comment on this.
Yeah, through the chair, I can provide some background on that letter. So in the planning phase for the replacement of a childcare portal, which needs to be relocated along Wallace Drive, there were discussions between the Director of Facilities and representatives of Central Saanich Fastball, and those discussions went well. But what we're hearing is that at a subsequent executive meeting of Central Saanich Fastball, when other executive members were brought into the discussion, there were some concerns in some certain areas. And so there is a feeling that a letter to the board would help with those discussions. One of the concerns we were told is the need for fencing and who would pay for that fencing. And we have subsequently confirmed to them that the plan had already included the necessary fencing to protect the portables and protect any equipment on the roofs of the portables from baseballs. And so we've kind of resolved that misunderstanding. There is a concern from the organization around they want to perform some upgrades to the field, which is in the backstop is in rough shape and needs to be replaced. So there are some investments that they want to make into the field, and they're uncomfortable doing that with not having an agreement with the school board. And so that is another item that they want to discuss. And so the discussions are ongoing, and I think there's an acceptance that while this reduces the usable space somewhat, it is still very much a usable field, and that it can be a workable compromise. And at the end of the day, community use is an important use of our school district facilities and fields, but it does need to be secondary to the needs for our programs for education and childcare. So I think through ongoing discussions to hopefully come to a place where we're able to meet both of those objectives.
And staff will come back to us if needed.
Yes, that's correct. If Central Saanich Fastball, if they are wanting to formalize a more like a formal agreement, as we have with other organizations in the community, that was something that would come back to the board for consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? Trustee Elder?
Thank you. I've been a bit concerned about this. There's no history of that field that it's used to. But a concern I expressed previously was that the left field would be shortened to the point where it would be unusable for a high level of basketball. Sounds like that's not a concern. The fence will be a regulation distance fence for the field, and it will be made high enough that home runs aren't going to destroy the portable or hit children. worse than that. Can I be assured that those matters are essentially resolved through this negotiation?
Yes, I don't know if it's regulations wise, but it's certainly with the construction of the fence, it's certainly usable for fastball. Probably not at a college level, but for the purposes that are required by Central Saanich basketball.
The other question I have about this, Chair, is does this, and I continue to wonder about correspondence as it comes in and gets extra questions to get answered. Now, this is a letter to the board, and I don't know that the board is planning to respond, except to have received it and had an update. I would hope that the basketball group wouldn't, in the absence of a letter from the board, think we don't care. How do we resolve the question of responding from the board to people who have written to the board, even though we might not have to?
Do you have any advice for us in this instance, Secretary? I mean, they know we got it because you're talking to them, but I take Trustee Elder's point. We haven't formalized it, acknowledged receipt.
Yeah, if the board wishes, the board could pass the motion directing myself or the chair to respond to this letter, outlining next steps even.
Well, everything. Trustee Elder,
It sounds like Trustee Murphy has an idea.
Trustee Murphy.
The Secretary Treasurer be requested to respond to concerns raised by the Central Saanich basketball, the CSE. CSE, what's Central Saanich Extreme Basketball, CSE basketball board.
Is there a seconder for the motion that the Secretary Treasurer be instructed to respond? I have a plethora of seconders. I'll take you, Trustee Van Waal.
Yes. I'm not a Central Saanich trustee and I tread with fear on Central Saanich territory, but one of the things I'm concerned about, and we've gone through a fairly agonizing process with a school in Northville, a former school in Northville, Salisbury Elementary, and the Allegro dance community, and the back and forth on that. And I whatever agreement is developed with the Central Saanich Extreme Fastball Group, I wanted to make sure that we protect the interests of the education functions and commitments of that field. I'm supportive, obviously, of community groups and exercise for kids and everything else, but our primary responsibility must remain to keep those fields and that piece of land in a manner that it allows for us to expand if we need to, as we are doing at the moment, and also provide the amenities and the spaces and the facilities that the educational program needs. So to have some kind of an agreement that clearly sets out those parameters, I think would be pretty useful.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, trustees? Trustee Elder?
I might suggest what I hope might be a friendly amendment without need for debate, that the request be the Secretary Treasurer respond on behalf of the board, so the recipients know that it's the board received it and the board is responding.
Agreed.
Is there any objection to that, trustees? That amendment is included. All right. Further discussion on the amended motion? The ST respond on behalf of the board to the Central Saanich Extreme Fastball. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That motion is carried. And then third is the matter from Mr. Farnworth, the Solicitor General. I don't know. Trustees, Mr. Reid, does anybody have any suggestion that we need to or should do, or what we might do with this?
Who decided to?
And almost a year after we sent ours to, I mean, received the file.
There's no If there's no further comments, we'll move along into the last item of correspondence, the fourth item, which is the letter from Ms. Norton with respect to the Cordova area stop sign issue. The trustees have received, and Mr. Reid, I'll ask you to comment on this as well, please.
Yeah, through the chair, in addition to this letter that is being received from Kelly Norton, I also report that we received at a staff level at the district and the school correspondence from other parents that are concerned about this issue. And when I reached out to staff at the district of Saanich, they had also reported they are hearing a lot of concerns about this intersection. So I want to just report first on my conversation with staff of the district of Saanich, and then what I believe would be the next steps. So in my discussions with the senior manager of transportation and development services, the response I received was that the decision to remove the stop signs in the north-south direction on Lochside Drive at this intersection was not made lightly, and the intersection was reviewed against the district's stop sign policy, which I've never heard before, but there's a stop sign policy. And one of the principles in their policy is that traffic signs should not be used as traffic calming. And in this case, Saanich staff observed that at the intersection of Lochside and Wellmena, the four-way stop had a very low level of compliance, which in their view typically means the traffic control treatment is unwarranted. And an unwarranted stop sign can increase risk rather than reducing it, because it creates the expectation by some of compliance that is not met. For example, someone will expect a car to stop and it does not. And so as a result of this review, Saanich determined to remove the stop signs. And that this was a step that was addressed further to further planning work that is planned for the Lochside Drive corridor. So Lochside Drive, longer term, Lochside Drive has been identified for upgrades in Saanich's active transportation plan. And they have tentative plans in their capital plan for construction upgrades to Lochside Drive in 2026. This will likely include traffic calming and traffic diversions to reduce traffic speed and volumes on Lochside Drive, while promoting use for pedestrians and cyclists. So this is part of their active transportation plan. So Saanich expects the planning work to begin in the first half of 2025, and it will include feedback from the community, and that includes the school and parents of Cordova Bay Elementary. In the short term, staff at Saanich have reported that they have heard quite clearly that the work here so far hasn't met the expectations of the community and our concerns, and that there are concerns with the current configuration. And so to address these concerns ahead of this further planning work, which is going to commence in 2025, Saanich has made the decision to install a crosswalk on the north side of the intersection crossing Lochside Drive. This is to maintain a clear right-of-way for pedestrians crossing at this location. And this will be in place to provide further additional protection for pedestrians while further consultation occurs on future upgrades to Lochside Drive in 2026. So in the short term, in the longer term, the district, the school and the district will participate in the consultations around the planned upgrades to Lochside Drive. This is something that we would always do at an elementary school, and we've done in recent years. Also, Keating, Prospect Lake, when there was major upgrades occurring on the frontage or in the neighborhood. And so this is something that we would participate in, and we would want to have a voice in to ensure that the concerns around safe routes to school are a major consideration. In the shorter term, our monitoring of this reports from the school are that there is a lot of volume that does go through this intersection during around pickup and drop off. Other times in the day, it's pretty quiet, but around pickup and drop off, there is a lot of volume, and with the change in the signals from a four-way stop to a two-way stop, we've heard that there is currently confusion around the motorists. So this is confusion by motorists and pedestrians. And so this is something that in the short term, we want to continue to monitor. And once the crosswalk is in, we do want to really reflect on whether it's after people become accustomed to the new controls, after there's a crosswalk in place, if this will address the concerns sufficiently, at least in the short term, until Saanich gets into their project around more significant upgrades to the corridor in 2026.
Trustee McMurray.
Through you, Executive Treasurer, were we consulted or informed, or was the school involved in any way prior to them taking out the stop signs? Just since it's happened?
Just since it's happened.
There is a crosswalk in there now, brand spanking new big white shiny crosswalk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out there the other day, it wasn't there, so
Yeah,
just.
no, is there now, yeah. But I'm glad that we've made contact with them, so now maybe they will consult with us before they carry on with whatever else they're doing. Is that what that letter said? I was trying to listen carefully. The school will be involved, or we'll be involved, something like that.
Yeah, we'll be involved.
Because obviously, the people who use those roads regularly are accustomed to the four-way stop, and now it's like, what do you do
Yeah.
now? But the crosswalk, I think, helps.
Do you see the need for a motion from the board related to this, Mr.?
I don't think so. Unless the board wants us to take another direction other than monitoring what's happened.
We've got their commitment.
Yeah, that would be premature.
Yeah, so we don't require direction on this matter unless the board wants us to take a different direction.
All right, thank you. Trustee Hickman?
Thank you, Chair. Should we have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the letter as it was directed to?
I've already attended to that with Ms. Norton. Yes. Thank you, Trustee Hickman. These are important points. Anything else, trustees, on this? Here on the plan? Thank you, Mr. Reed. And then the final piece of correspondence is the letter of October 10 from COPAX, from Megan Pacific, the chair, which trustees have. In your hands, friends, with respect to anything you'd like to suggest here. Trustee Elder?
Thank you, Chair. This is a considerable amount of work done by,
Yes.
probably more than one person. And I think it deserves a full response and a detailed response. I'm assuming that that's happening. I don't want to suggest a motion that would direct staff to, respond in detail to every point in the letter, but is my assumption right that somebody is attending to that and looking at each of these suggestions and providing some sort of considered response? I know if that were to happen within the transportation department, they are beyond slammed every day and don't need a bunch more work. But this deserves I think, a fully considered response on what looks possible in that regard, Chair, through you.
Mr. Reid, your advice?
Yeah, my thoughts on this is, this is the first year of implementing a new policy, a new procedure. It's definitely been an adjustment for many, and as you can see, there's a lot of interest in and particularly from parents, families that weren't able to get onto the bus this year. And so we have already internally been having a lot of discussions about how, not only how things are going, but how things, how we can refine things and do things differently next year. So we're quite open to having these conversations, and perhaps the next step, rather than a response where we're detailing our view on each one of these matters, because on the surface, there are some things in here where we think maybe, there are other things in here where we, without having a discussion, and we would develop a response, it might come off as being a little bit, I wouldn't use the word flippant, but there are certain things in here that on the surface, I would think, I don't know if that is realistic. For example, having managing a system of standby riders like Air Canada does, for example, like it's a good idea, but how would we do that practically? And I think instead of responding to each one of those in a letter, I think it would be it'd be more productive to sit down and have a conversation about each of these and what we can do and what perhaps we are not able to do, and those conversations about what we are not able to do might lead to, well, maybe this is something we should look at. And so I do feel that there's a lot here, and my preference would be to not respond in writing to every single one of these things, but perhaps respond with an offer to sit down and go through this letter and have a discussion about it.
Trustee McMurphy? I see a motion coming.
Something along the lines of the staff be requested to meet with COPAX and discuss the suggestions that they have made in their letter regarding the changes to the school bus transportation system.
The letter of October 10th.
Letter of October 10th, yes. Mindful of the fact that this is the first year of a new system, and this isn't part of the motion.
No, let's no, is that the motion?
Yeah, requested to meet with OPAX to review and discuss the suggestions that they made in their letter regarding school bus transportation.
Right, letter of October 10th. And seconded by you, Trustee Elder. All right. And go ahead, Trustee Elder. You have more to say.
Yes, I mean, what we've implemented this year is a new system, and it's obviously there's going to be bugs in any new system. Some of these bugs may be, obliterated easily and quickly. Others, not so much, because there are systemic issues, there are financing issues, there are environmental issues, and there are all the issues that are individual to every family who has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 kids wanting to get on the bus, and trying to find a system that addresses the overall organizational needs as well as the individual family needs is not an easy chore. It's not an easy task. But I think having ongoing conversations will help. Obviously, we're not going to change the system in the middle of this year. I'm sure that's probably understood by everyone. I mean, there might be minor tweaks. You can do routes and whatever, I don't know. But in terms of the actual philosophy behind the transportation system, I think it's a sound philosophy, but that doesn't mean that we can't make some adjustments somewhere along the line, and it's very helpful to have those conversations, I think, with COPAX and dealing specifically with the issues that they raise as well as generally with the objectives that we have for our student transportation system.
Thank you. And Trustee Stilton?
Chair.
I'm just wondering if it would be better to let the transportation system get regularized, get everybody used to it, and then say, we will review down the road when things are running the way we expect them to run. Because if you sit down right now, you're going to be, it would seem that you'd be talking about a lot of things that are in the process of being worked out. So how productive that might be, I don't know. I mean, you can acknowledge, of course, all the time and energy that has gone into this feedback, and say it is being seriously taken under advisement as we work through the wrinkles in the system, but to actually have, I would say, also a complete review of things. We need time, we need the experience. So, and I'm also mindful of staff energies and having to deal with the transportation system and not fending off questions right now. So I guess, so that's why I tend to think that I have to go against this, or not support this motion.
I suppose, Trustee Silzer, that your point could be made by staff if the motion is carried. The staff could enter into discussion with COPAX and actually advocate for time before responding in detail. I mean, if we leave that kind of discretion with staff, it may serve both purposes.
Yes, thank you.
Other discussion, trustees, questions? Trustee Allen?
I would comment about some of what flows through here and has flowed through a lot of the feedback from parents regarding the new bus, the new transportation policy. That relates to French immersion students, and I would hate to provide any, false hope to parents of French immersion students that a review or reconsideration or answering these questions might move us in the direction of providing transportation from someone's home to their French immersion school of choice. We know that that would cost, 7 or 8 buses and I don't know, a large amount of money that the district simply doesn't have. And I think that's been made abundantly clear that immersion is the program of choice and the district cannot afford to take people from their home to that school. So I would hope that there would be in these ongoing conversations an ongoing reminder that if part of this is to try and convince the board that there should be transportation from the homes of French immersion or neighborhoods of French immersion schools, students to those schools, that's been determined and declared a number of times as a bit of a bridge too far. So I don't want to have false hope come through these conversations. But I really respect that they continue to be priorities for many of these parents. It just concerns me that there may be a sense that if we push hard enough, we'll get it. And I think that needs to be really fleshed out on an ongoing basis in a realistic way. That's just a comment, but I also have a question, and it is, will there come a time, and it might need to be tonight, where this matter is referred to the policy committee, because there's a fair amount in here that speaks to policy considerations. And I think it would be wise to look at these suggestions at some point. Maybe it flows from the next conversations that will flow from the previous motion, where it would become sensible to take some of these matters through policy rather than just through staff to parent conversations. So I think I will not move that, but I think at some point we should have in the back of our minds that the questions and concerns from parents as expressed in COPAX and through other means ought to resurface in the policy committee at some point during the year.
Seems to me that's a very constructive suggestion, Trustee Elder. And as I would see the sequence of events, if the motion is carried, staff will enter into those discussions. And then through those, may be able to crystallize points that the policy committee could consider. Yes, Mr. Reid, do you consider that the motion and the discussion you've heard provides adequate guidance to staff on these issues?
Through the chair, it does. And I think having a conversation is, starting this with a conversation, open conversation about where we're at and the work that's ahead, I think, and even providing some information. I recall seeing a suggestion that we use software for route optimization. What we do, we've been using Transversa software for years for route optimization. So I think kind of going through these and having that back and forth and building that understanding of what we do and the things that we're having wonderings about that may be different and handling some of these concerns, I think is the best way forward in building the best system that we can.
I just hope you don't call it leads, feel like you're gonna hit by a bus.
Oh, she didn't.
Thank you for your guidance and your thoughts on this, and trustees, thank you for your approach. Let's vote on the motion. Yes, could you read the motion, please, Ms. Lancy?
Yeah, staff be requested to meet with COPAX and discuss the suggestions that they have made in their letter of October 10th regarding the changes to the school bus transportation system.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. That completes correspondence. Item 15 is our second question period and second opportunity in the meeting for questions from partner representatives or public or guests. If there are any, raise your hand. Mr. Greenfield.
Just to add a little bit of additional context to the transportation discussion. We've observed within COPAX that some of the parents who have come forward have been very constructive and very realistic in their expectations. And the district has done a great job of communicating where things stand in terms of budgeting and things like that. And one of the things that was also quite well received by the parents group was the idea that things have to settle out for a little bit before we really understand what we're dealing with. So I think that the parents would be quite understanding of the fact that we may need to let a bit of time pass before we can have constructive discussions. Kind of speaking on my own behalf from my own observations, some of the parents who were coming forward seemed to be quite constructive and quite realistic in their expectations. It didn't really strike us as activists. So just to add some additional context to this, and there's a very broad understanding that this is a nice, this system has its limits, but some of these parents are just desperate, and that's where this is coming from. It's pure desperation on their part. So that's what we're seeing there. So I didn't really have a question in there, but I felt this context was an important thing to add here. So, yeah, that's all, exactly.
Thank you for those insights. Thank you for your time. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, and so, Mr. Reid, I'm unaware of any other businesses submitted. And so, trustees, that completes the agenda for this evening. Is there any objection to adjourning at this time? I declare that the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
All